when you want to deliver a public presentation, start with the audience and not with your topic. Usually, when we start watching or listening to our recordings, is a very negative reaction. Always argue as if you were right, but always listen as if you were wrong. Our brains have a limited capacity for acquiring knowledge, so don't overflow people with information, don't overflow people with difficulty. Create opportunities for your employees to hold informal meetings. When people talk over their coffee or they meet informally, it's not wasting corporate money. That's a perfect investment of corporate money.
Welcome to Pragmatic Talks, a podcast and video series where we discuss startups, contemporary digital product development, modern technologies, and product management. This episode is brought to you by Pragmatic Coders in collaboration with Agile by Example, one of the largest Agile conferences in Europe. We believe that everyone should have equal access to knowledge about product development and entrepreneurship, and also everyone should have the opportunity to apply it in pursuit of making our world a better place. Through this series, we aim to create an impact on the future world. In today's episode, we are joined by Patrycja Obara, a communication coach and trainer specializing in public speaking. Her expertise extends to both cross-cultural and cross-gender communication. Patrycja is also a talented singer, songwriter, music producer, and academic teacher. Today's discussion covers several key areas of communication, especially communication for leaders who want to be listened to and heard. That is not always the same thing. We also dived into effective communication strategies and knowledge sharing in the workplace. Then we had covered the topic of communication challenges in remote work setup. In the end, we offered practical tips how to communicate to sell better. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Patrycja Obara.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone.
It's great to have you here. And we always start with the very first question. Who is Patrycja Obara and what is your story?
Okay, long story short. I stand on 3 legs, I would say. And one leg is corporate training, communication, public speaking. The second leg is the voice. I work with the voice. I'm a certified vocal coach and I run a singing school. And the third leg is art, and it's between the realms of music and theater.
Let's start about the connection between the third leg that we said, the art and songwriting, singing. How does it relate to communication and teaching people how to communicate better? Are there any lesson learned from concerts or singing to people or being on stage and the communication itself?
I think it actually works both ways. I draw a lot from my professional experience and put it in music, and I draw a lot from music and put it in my business activity. One thing for sure is when I'm on stage, I don't think it's a big difference if I'm there to sing, to perform a theater play, or to deliver a public speech. It's the same kind of emotion, it's the same kind of stage fright, the same kind of fear, and the same way to manage it. I think being on stage artistically gives me an opportunity to connect with the audience in a unique way, deep from the heart and not from the intellect. And this is what I like to draw from then in my business operations and business presentations, because I think in the end, I don't want to sound like too emotional because I'm a very practical person. But I think in the end, it all comes down to the heart, to emotions. Every engagement, I believe, is emotional engagement. And this is the lesson that I learned on stage. But also working in business allowed me to make some good choices when I'm creating music, to make a plan of promotion, for example, to look from the perspective of the client, of the audience, and figure out what they may want, what may be good for them, and how I can meet them in the middle so I don't sell myself, but still do something that can be good for people. So I think these two areas are intertwined.
Perfect. So let's dive deeper into the topic of being on stage or speaking to people, because this podcast video series is mainly recorded for people who are working with other people as well, but maybe working on the products like product managers or CEOs, startups, founders, etc. They need to pitch their startups to the investors, sometimes pitch on stage to the crowd. Let's dive deeper into this area. Tell us a little bit more how to do it well. both on stage, but also the people that you know, how to be convincing, how to be good in promoting yourself, your product, your services.
I hope that, throughout this conversation, pragmatic business leaders are not going to jump to the next movie because I will be saying a lot of things, human-centered things instead of business-centered things. And my practical tip here would be to start with the person that you're talking to and not yourself. When you want to deliver a public presentation, start with the audience and not with your topic. Very often when I do public speaking training and I talk to the participants of this training, they're delivering a presentation, then I want to give them feedback. And the first question I ask is, what was the purpose of your presentation? And most often the answer that I hear is, because I think this topic is important and I wanted to share it. Yeah, what for? Because I want people to know about this. Why? Because then they will understand. Okay, what's the point of understanding? Because knowing something, understanding something is not an advantage in itself. It only becomes an advantage when you can translate it into your life, into your practical operations. So how can they translate it? And then after 5 more questions, we reach the purpose, which is, for example, they can be more effective at work and they can finish early, get more money, whatever. This is the practical advantage. But to figure it out, you have to start with who's listening to you, not with the topic that you want to share. So think about the people, think about what problems they have, what hopes they have, what dreams they have. And then if what you serve them is an answer to these problems, to these dreams, you've got it. If you don't think about it beforehand, it's random, it's a game of chance. And for some people it will work, for most people it won't. I believe thinking about your audience first is a game changer.
I believe that's pretty similar to what I have the chance to spoke with some successful startup founders, and all of them said that you need to speak in a way that will address the investor's needs. The investor's dream is to actually invest into the company that will become unicorn or even more, like that they will have the return from the return on investment, like not even 10 times, but 40 or 100 times.
Yes.
So having this intention in mind that you want to show them that you are this kind of startup is very important. As you said, like think about the audience, start with them, their needs, their dreams. And what about the emotion? You already started talking about emotion. So how to play on the emotion? How to use the emotion of the audience to be more convincing?
Well, I want to be careful with answering this question because I don't want to suggest anything that would sound like advising people to manipulate the audience. I always recommend honesty, building an honest connection with the audience. Don't be an actor when you stand on the stage. Be who you are with your real intention and a real intention to connect. For example, what I often see is a speaker on stage who asks a question, but there is no intention to actually hear the answer. They have a predetermined agenda. They ask, okay, who in this room likes pierogi? I know that everybody likes pierogi, but maybe some people don't like pierogi. And if your presentation is built on the preconceived answer that everybody will raise their hands, then first of all, you're lost. You don't know where to go with your presentation if somebody says, no, I hate pierogi. But secondly, the connection is broken because this is the moment when people understand, okay, this person is not listening. So if you switch off from the audience will switch off from you. So I would say always be honest, always find the intention, maybe the curiosity, what's going on in this audience. And then you will know which emotion is the right emotion. If it's okay to make them laugh, if your job is to deliver bad news, you want to tell people that a project is being shut down, you don't want to make jokes. But maybe you do. Because maybe you're also on the same team and you're with them and you've been expecting this for quite a while. And by making jokes, you show them that you're on the same ship. So if you understand what's going on in the audience, you can reach for these emotions rather naturally. And I think when we just talk to people normally, like you're with a group of friends and you want to pitch an idea to them, you will naturally do it. So I would ask myself the question, why does it change when I'm on stage? Why do I stop taking people seriously when I'm on stage? Why do I start pretending when I'm on stage? Do you know what I mean? Start with your own intention. If you really believe in what you are talking about, people will respond with believing in what you're talking about. If you are disengaged, you're just there and you're reading from the slide and you don't care what you're saying because you're thinking, I have this next meeting in half an hour, your audience will very quickly start scrolling their phones. Second of all, be present. Observe what's going on around you and respond. So if you feel like people are losing their attention, maybe it means you've given them too much to digest, too much meat. Maybe now they need a vegetable, something lighter, a question, some food for thought, maybe a story, maybe a joke, maybe an anecdote. And I would also recommend not, like I said before, not trying to be someone else on stage, because if you focus all your attention on what should I do with my hands, how should I modulate my voice, oh, now I should speak slower or now I should speak faster, then you're disengaging from the emotional flow between you and the audience because you're only focusing on yourself. So if you want to practice things like voice modulation, gestures, thinking about eye contact, I suggest you do it when you're rehearsing and not when you're already on stage.
So how to prepare for that? Like you already started talking about if you want to prepare, etc. So how person can teach themselves to be a good public speaker?
Preparation is an essential part of public speaking, maybe even more important than being on stage in the end, which is just a side result, side effect of preparing. Very often, preparation process looks like this. We have an idea of a topic, we sit down at our computers, write down some key points. Sometimes we write down every sentence. We prepare slides, and then we keep reading, repeating in our head. And I would say this is the introductory phase of preparing. The essential phase of preparing is to say it. Because only when you start saying it, you begin to understand, okay, here it's a little bit unclear. And here, maybe this joke was not too funny, not as funny as I expected. And here I said two thoughts, but they don't connect. I need to find a way to connect them. Most of all, you can look at the clock and see, is my timing right? I had 15 minutes for my presentation and it's 10 minutes and I'm only at the introduction. These are the things you can only realize when you're rehearsing. Many people say you should rehearse in front of the mirror. I would say don't. Because when you are on stage, you can't see yourself.
Yes.
And practicing in front of a mirror may be a distractor, and it may make you more stressed instead of more prepared, because you look at yourself and you think, something's wrong with my gestures, something's wrong with my, left profile or something like that. So I'd recommend you try to create for your rehearsals conditions which are as similar as possible to the conditions you will have on stage. If you're going to present sitting down in front of your computer, get two people to connect with you on some online platform and present to them as a dry run. If you're going to present standing up, rehearse standing up, not lying in your bed in your bathrobe, because it's a different kind of conditions, yeah? I had a funny situation yesterday in one training because one of the participants was practicing an elevator pitch. And he took all the people that were in the room, there were 10 of us, and he told us to stand between two tables. So we were squeezed in there as if we were in an elevator. And he said, okay, so now you're a group of managers and I'm pitching to you in the next 20 seconds. And it was amazing because suddenly he felt it. Oh my God, I'm trapped with these people in this small space. It's very uncomfortable. It's very inconvenient. We're like almost intimately looking at each other and I have 20 seconds to tell who I am and why they should invest in me. If he was standing on the stage far away from the audience, he wouldn't have had this experience. It was his idea. Credits to him. Great one. Yes.
So also, I hope you will succeed with investment.
I'm quite sure he will.
What about recording yourself when you're training?
It's another thing that I would be careful with because a recording can be a great source of information if you can work with it. Because I think it takes a little bit of training. The first thing that happens to us usually when we start watching or listening to our recordings is a very negative reaction. You know, this inner critic is sitting on our shoulder, this little devil, and telling us, this was bad, this was wrong, here you spoke too fast, and here you looked ugly, and here oh dear, you shouldn't behave like that, it's so horrible. And this is not constructive. This is just traumatizing. I had people in trainings, and it happened the day before yesterday actually, that a woman said, I'm traumatized by public speaking because, 2 years ago I was in this training and I watched my own recording, and since then I hate public speaking. Wow, this shouldn't have happened. Somebody should have told her how to work with the recordings, and if she wasn't ready to do that, she shouldn't have done it. So if you're ready to do it, which means you can distance yourself and be objective and treat the person in the recording like it was your best friend and not yourself, then great source of information. With your best friend, you would probably tell them what they could correct, but you would also probably tell them what they did right. You would balance it. Do the same thing with yourself, and then you can work with the recording.
Sounds like a great advice. One more thing about speaking to the computer when you are on a remote, that might be my advice to people. Something that I learned, I think somewhere at the beginning of the pandemic, is that most of the tools, video conferencing tools, they do have an option to turn off your own picture, so you don't see yourself. It's the same as you said.
Great advice. Yeah? So yes.
You are not focused on yourself, but rather focused on other people, because otherwise when you see yourself speaking, then you are more focused or always distracted by yourself. Like you are not looking as great as you would like to, etc., etc.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about the communication, not the speaking, because speaking is usually one direction. Of course, there is like emotion, like feedback from the audience, etc., etc. But the communication is rather a two-dimensional, but two-direction. Flow of information. So, how to again, very broad question, broad topic. How to improve the communication between people, between a pair, between a group of people, team of people, etc. When we have when we have to work together or do something together.
I love your questions, because almost every single one of them is material for a separate conversation.
I know.
So I think long story short is going to be a motif of our conversation today. That's a very nice question. I really like it. And there was a piece of advice that I recently read in a book that I really like. The book is called The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. And I'll be referring to this book in my speech today, actually. And there was a piece of advice: always argue as if you were right, but always listen as if you were wrong. Which is to be confident, be adamant about your point of view, but always be open to other people's perspectives. So if I were to narrow down all communication to this one piece of advice, maybe it would be this one.
This is very connected to the advice that we get, I think, yesterday when we recorded here the conversation with Pete Burns, who said that in terms of the leadership, the leader should always be listening in a way that I may not know, I may be wrong, and have this mindset of listening to people because I might be wrong.
Wow, amazing.
And that's very connected to what we had a conversation yesterday. So when you watch this episode, most probably the other one with Pete was already published, so you can reach to it as well.
I'm looking forward to watching it as well. You've really got my attention.
That was a great conversation as well as this one. Okay, so communication. What about remote work and remote communication? It's much harder. I remember 10 or 15 years ago when I was started, working in Agile industry, working with people, training others, teaching others. I've learned about something that was called communication osmosis. That the communication is not only the dialogue, but it's only all the information that are flowing in the work environment or in any environment, at home or whatever. But for example, when we sit together in a room, there is much more communication that happens, much more information are flowing than we could imagine even. Sometimes we are not participating in some conversation, but we hear it, even not listen, but just hear the conversation that someone was speaking, someone else about some problem, some issue, and then let's say 2 months later, I'm facing the same issue, a similar issue, and I already know that those people, they already solved it or already get through it, so I can reach to them, so I save a lot of time instead of figuring things on my own. And that's impossible, in my opinion, in the remote work. But maybe you have some tips to improve the communication, especially in the remote environment.
I don't know how much I should reveal about my talk today, but when this conversation is published, the talk has already been done, so I can reveal.
And there is a chance it also will be published, because it's also recorded, so people could reach to it.
So in this talk, I'm talking about our brain not being a machine or a muscle, but being something more of a magpie. Magpie is this bird, black and white bird, that steals everything that it finds and uses these materials, which are random, found everywhere in their environment, to build their nest or their little surroundings. And our brain works in a similar way. And the three sources from which it likes to collect its materials are the body, our own body, the space in which we reside, and other people. And in online communication, I would try to involve as many of these elements as possible. So I would try to incorporate movement when possible. I would try to incorporate nature. So take your laptop outside if possible, because it increases your focus, your ability to think creatively, to solve problems, to make decisions, and then incorporate other people. So as often as possible, try to make your online meetings interactive. So don't just switch off all the cameras and let one person speak, and don't prepare a presentation like it was an in-person presentation where you speak for half an hour and everybody's listening. Whenever you're preparing a presentation, think of it as dialogue and let all the people leave their microphones switched on so that there is no barrier to join the conversation. Use the crowd as much as possible.
As turning microphones on, it's a very important tip, even because, there is so many situations that, you are mute. So if you have all of the microphones turned on, then it's much easier.
Right, but there's also this psychological barrier on the side of the participant. They want to say something because it's a split-second thought, but they have to, find their laptop, find the trackpad, find the arrow, find the microphone, unmute, and then somebody else is talking or the speaker is on a different topic completely, and then they think, okay, I didn't like
Too late.
Too late, yeah.
Right. What do you think about you said about movement. What do you think about taking a walk together remotely?
Fantastic idea. Yes, take your phones, just be careful so that, you don't cross the street looking at the screen, but go to a park, take your phone and walk and talk at the same time. It's almost as if you were walking together.
That might be a brilliant idea.
And it's nature and movement in one, right? So you have two of the three elements, and three actually, because there is the other person that you're talking to.
Yeah, and that sounds like a nice idea. I will try it.
Right, let me know how it went.
I hope the weather will be good enough on the autumn. Yesterday we also spoke with Lisa Tessetelant about remote work, and we talk a little bit about the knowledge sharing in the organization, especially remote organization. But let's try to talk about, because I know that this is a subject of your presentation today here as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the effective knowledge sharing, both in the remote and physical environment of work.
This brings us back to the three elements that I talked about a minute ago. So incorporating the body, incorporating space, and incorporating other people. Let's maybe focus on this third element because I think it's crucial here. First of all, if you want to share your knowledge effectively, you being the mentor, the teacher in this specific situation, remember that you know much more than you think you know. Remember that there is something like the curse of knowledge, and you're aware of maybe 30% of your expertise. The rest is subconsciously carried out on a day-to-day basis. So if you're trying to transfer this knowledge to other people, you're skipping the 70% of important bits because you don't even realize they exist. So always take a moment to stop and think, does the person I'm trying to teach something to have the background to understand what I'm talking about? And there is an easy way to check it. Ask them what they know and start with what they know. Don't start with what you want to share. Always start with what the other person knows and then stack up new knowledge on top of what they already have.
Mm-hmm. Could everyone become a great teacher? Is it something that people can train, can learn? Or is it something that requires, like a special skills that are, that people are born with?
The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is yes and no.
Okay.
So yes, it is something that everybody can learn how to do. And yes, it requires a special set of skills, but these are not skills that you're born with. These are skills that you can teach yourself, you can learn from other people. And I think it's a very important topic. Thank you for bringing it up, because I don't know about other countries, but in Poland, teaching is considered to be self-explanatory, right? You're an expert in something, it means you're a teacher. Mm-hmm. When I was doing my PhD studies, we had to teach students. And for me, it was fine because I had been teaching students before I started the studies. But most of my fellow students were terrified because, you know what? We had 15 hours in the 4-year program. We have 15 hours of didactics. And within these 15 hours, we had 3 hours on motivation, 3 hours on how to write the syllabus, and some other bureaucracy, right? So this is not important when you're a teacher. Teaching is a skill that has to be learned. You can't just go with, okay, I'm an expert and I'm going to stand in front of people and talk about my expertise. Because first of all, you have to understand how the brain works, how the brain consumes knowledge, and you have to operate on that. And there are many wonderful resources on how to be a better teacher. And I would also recommend trainings, train the trainer, workshops, where you can learn some practical tools, maybe some, tricks, but also a lot of psychological knowledge that will guide you through the teaching process.
Mm-hmm. So what is like one silver bullet, one silver advice that you would give, like maybe something with this psychological knowledge about people's brain? So what people who want to teach others, what they should know about other people's brain or their brains?
Our brains have a limited capacity for acquiring knowledge at one point of time. So don't overflow people with information. Don't overflow people with difficulty. Less is more. Less is better. It's better to teach one thing, fundamental thing, but teach it very well, because this increases curiosity and your students will want to learn more because they feel confident. They feel, okay, I got it. I want to learn the next thing. Than to give them 5 things and leave them confused and lost and frustrated.
Focus on one thing, like shorter agenda, more time, more breaks as well. Something that.
Yeah, and then you get a cognitive loop. Like they learn something, they bring something back. You can learn on top of that. Then they bring something back again. And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds agile, doesn't it?
That is definitely is. This is why I think that, for example, you already mentioned that teaching students on the university or somewhere else. This is why I think universities, especially in Poland, are not doing the great job, because usually when you go to the university, regardless of the faculty, whatever you want to study, it's like the first year you're learning some basics. Second year you are also learning basics,
but from another teacher,
another teacher, another area. And then maybe on the third year, in the last semester, you will use this knowledge that you learned after 2.5 years and start using this knowledge. And that actually doesn't make sense, especially that, let's take math, subject of math. You have like one class every week for 2 hours for the 5 months. That gives you 100 hours or something.
Yeah.
And you are not using this knowledge for the next 2.5 years or 2 years.
Yeah,
almost like forgetting it, but also you are not actually learning it, because learning is a process of using the knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you haven't learned anything. You only possess some knowledge, but if you haven't used it, it's not learning.
That's so important. And For example, my experience with one course of studies that I've done is that we had a lot of psychology classes with different teachers, but one was like positive psychology, the other one was another type of psychology, and then another type of psychology. And almost every teacher started with the same things. Almost every teacher talked about the big five and other personality classifications. I was sitting there and thinking, why? Why? It would take one board meeting, 2 hours, to decide, okay, so who does the big five? You do the big five. Okay, so when is your class? In January. Okay, mine is in February, so I add something to it because they already know the big five. Let's not waste the students' time. Let's use it effectively, right? So my big dream is that one day at all universities, there will be board meetings, not to talk about, I don't know, formal bureaucracy, but to actually talk about how we are going to teach these people effectively this semester.
I will start studying with that day again.
All of us will.
All of us will, because it will be much more fun and much more effective.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of knowledge sharing, like there is like a knowledge that people are exchanging. There are teachers who want to teach others, but there is, organizations need to pass the knowledge across the organization, across to next generations of employees, to just assure the survival of the organization and growing of the organization as well. Do you have any advices on how to structure the knowledge, how to pass the knowledge to new employees, for example, in the organization or across the organization?
I think it will be a summary of many things that we have already said, my advice and your advice. First of all, make sure you don't serve the knowledge in portions which are impossible to consume. This is what often happens in organizations, that the onboarding training lasts, for example, the whole week, and it's 5 days, 8 hours a day of learning theory of how different departments and projects operate, and I have no idea about it whatsoever. And with every following day, I understand less because I get all the abbreviations, all the procedures, all the processes, and I don't understand. How about making one onboarding training once a week and making it last 2 hours and not 8, and maybe prolong the onboarding process to 3 months instead of 1 week, making sure, what you said before, that the trainee has an opportunity to apply the knowledge so that they understand why they needed it, and questions begin to arise. It's a kind of Montessori model. When questions arise, you want more knowledge. So then they come to you after 1 week and they say, okay, I'm ready for more. I want to understand how the customs department works. I would focus on that. Another thing is to start with why, not with what. Listen to Simon Sinek and his advice. And this is also a thing we talked about today already. Start with your audience, figure out what they need, and give them an answer to that need. For example, if you're teaching new knowledge in an organization, find practical applications of this knowledge. Show the trainee how it's going to make their work easier, for example, because then they have a motivation to learn.
That's great advice. I'm pretty sure that I will recommend or even make it mandatory to our HR department to watch this episode only for those advices to actually, improve our onboarding process and all the communication process that we have at our employee.
To hear that.
That's really great. Let's talk a little bit about, psychological aspects of learning, or maybe the environmental aspects as well, like what people need to have an environment to be able to learn new things. Because, I know like a very oppressive environments, for example, or a situation that people are stressed, are limiting their capabilities of learning. So how to increase people's capability of learning?
This well-being aspect that you mentioned, of course, it's very important. And also it's a foundation of learning. If I were to think of something else, I would say walls. People need walls. People learn better when they have walls than when they are working in an open space, because they are less distracted by conversations, by faces, by movement. They can focus, but also they get privacy, and privacy allows us to experiment without feeling any social pressure. Because whenever we are around people, even if we like them, feel comfortable with them, we want to belong. We want to be a part of this group. So we will not make such risky choices, experiments, as we will if we are alone. And when you have these walls, let your employees arrange them, decorate them in any way they like. Make them feel at home. Let them have little, pictures or tokens that remind them who they are, what they are good at, and what they like, because this will focus their attention on these things and grow their curiosity to learn more. Also, I think a very, very important thing is to create opportunities for your employees to hold informal meetings. Mm-hmm. This is where the magic happens. And when you talk about, an interaction you've had with a client during an informal meeting, and it's juicy, right? With all the juicy details, with all the taboo words and everything else. It's a story that people will remember and learn from. And if they have a similar client in the future, they will remember, you had this experience, he did it this way, so maybe I will do something similar. Or maybe for him it didn't work, so maybe I will do it in a different way. But if you presented the same case study in a formal situation, you would get rid of the juicy details, you would get rid of the taboo words and everything like that. You would probably skip some important elements of this knowledge, real life elements of this knowledge, which would make it less relatable. So informal meetings, definitely a wonderful learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So actually, like in the past when people were still working from the offices, like that things happen usually over the coffee.
Yes.
To the coffee machine.
Yeah.
In the kitchen or somewhere. And now it's more harder. So yesterday when we spoke with Zette a lot about remote work, we also mentioned that these informal conversations are very, very important. And like this is a part where also our culture is built, but not necessarily only there, and shouldn't be built only there, but also the things that you are mentioning, like the informal communication is very important for knowledge sharing as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So at least once upon a time, the team should, or the entire company, the best, should meet in the office or somewhere and work together and have a lot of informal meetings. So whenever people are saying that they are not coming to the office because there is so many informal, irrelevant conversations, no. Those conversations are very, very relevant for business.
Yes, and I think it's also very important for leaders to remember and understand that when people talk over their coffee or they meet informally, it's not wasting time, it's not wasting corporate money. That's a perfect investment of corporate money, because this is how the team grows. And also, I'm thinking of a new trend that I'm noticing these days when I do workshops in organizations. For a while, when the pandemic started, many workshops were held online. Companies were happy about it because they didn't have to bring the trainer from another city. It was enough to send them a Zoom invitation. But now workshops have moved back to corporate buildings. And when people join me for the workshops, very often they say, when I ask them in the end what was the biggest value of the workshop for them, they say that the biggest value was that they could meet after 2 months, for example, and exchange their experience.
That's crazy, yeah?
Yeah, I feel like I don't even have to be there. Of course, I do have to be there. I'm the facilitator of this
Otherwise,
process.
they wouldn't come to the office.
Yeah, and maybe I ask the right questions. I don't know. But looking at the group, learning from within itself, this is the magic. I really like this part of the process.
That's something that I've took a part in a few online workshops in the past, and like I was like, oh my God, it's so different from the regular workshop. And actually I learned a fraction of things that I usually learned during, the regular workshop. And as you said, like in most cases, like when there is a good trainer or workshop leader, facilitator, they are able to facilitate the workshop in a way that people are actually learning from each other and not from the expert.
Yeah.
He is just, or she is just there to support them.
However, there is one exception to online trainings. I think when it comes to public speaking, online trainings, apart from in-person trainings, I think today are essential because they give you the real experience. Because most presentations in business are done online these days. So when you also learn them online, you get the actual experience of people not listening to you.
So there's another topic that I would like to discuss with you that you already mentioned, online work.
Okay.
Like, because, we are, we like the entire industry right now, since pandemic started, everyone is hiring people remotely or assessing people remotely. Those people in most cases will be working remotely or partially remotely, like hybrid. And just a few companies are decided to come back to the office for the full time. So the thing that I was always missing in the recruitment processes in various organizations various people that I spoke to from various companies was that actually nobody ever have been assessing the ability to work remotely. And I believe that this is like a skill that people need to develop, how to work effectively, but also how to communicate effectively. So maybe you have some ideas how to assess the person's communication skills, online communication skills, not, like a conversation like this.
The first thing that comes to my mind, do an online interview.
Yeah, but that's just an interview, and this communication is not only verbal, but usually there is like a mail, Slack.
First of all, I would think do an online group interview.
Okay.
Because then you see how willing the person is to participate, to discuss with other people in this difficult situation. When you talk about other means of communication like Slack and written forms, maybe it's too simple what I'm gonna say, but if you want to test a skill, bring it into the recruitment process. Get the people to do something on Slack. Design a communication process that is necessary as one of the stages of recruitment, where people have to, communicate, interact, find out some information from someone else, find a person responsible for something, get a piece of knowledge, figure out who has it, and do it all in a preferable form of communication and see how effective they will be. It's the only thing that gives you any real kind of information about their actual skills. Because if you just ask them, are you good with online communication? Yeah, of course I am. I've been doing it. Yeah. But if you want to see if they're really good at it, or maybe, I don't like this idea of checking if somebody is good at something. I like the idea of observing them and seeing in which aspect they need your assistance. And then as a leader, you can decide, okay, can I give this person assistance in this area and still hire them? Or maybe their need of assistance is so extensive for the moment that we don't have the right resources. Because I think this is the point of recruitment, right? To see if you can meet somehow.
Coachability and ability of people to learn new skills is also very important. Like, if people are coachable, then it's much easier to actually train them anything that should be assessed as well. Okay, let's try to talk a little bit about your prediction in terms of the communication, knowledge sharing in the nearest future, especially in the context of the things that are changing right now, which obviously is artificial intelligence and how companies, how people are starting using it. Like, for example, wide range of content that is created right now is created with the support of AI. Content, the written content, but also some videos, etc. Are created by AI. How do you see the future of communication? What will change actually?
Of course, AI will take over the world.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, we will be just sources of energy.
Very inefficient, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I'm rather optimistic about AI. I heard yesterday, I participated in a discussion that we don't really have AI yet. What we have now is machine learning, right? But let's assume it is already here, but we don't know it. I'm rather optimistic about it because it brings a new kind of balance, I think, to the table. Capitalism has taught us that we can keep taking. And we take and we take and we want to take more, we want to get more. But with AI, there is this slight change that whenever you take something from it, you have to give something to it. You have to share a bit of your knowledge if you want to get accurate knowledge from AI, So it's a kind of exchange, interaction, which is a nice shift. Of course, there is this controversy about who owns your knowledge after you've given it away, but that's not the topic for today's conversation, right? What I'm thinking is that AI as a producer of knowledge, will shift our attention to some aspects which I think are crucial and overlooked right now. It will shift our attention from memorizing things, memorizing facts, memorizing information, to critically judging things, facts, information. Because storing facts doesn't have to happen in your head, but understanding what they mean, this is a crucial skill. And, so far, it's been like this, that you can always check something on Wikipedia, you don't have to remember it anymore. But now you have AI, which will look through the entire internet for you and make a summary, but it's up to you to see, is it real knowledge or is it popular convictions? Is it facts or is it myths? What does it mean? What conclusions can I draw from it? How does it correspond with everything else that I've known so far? So I think it shifts our attention to things which only people can do. Critical judgment, emotional judgment, interaction, flow of information, cognitive loops, how the information evolves when I send it to you and then you resend it back to me. So I'm optimistic about it because I think it can actually paradoxically make us more human.
Yeah, that is also like from the few conversations that we already had about AI, not only here but in our studio as well. I'm very optimistic in from the same reason that, that I see the potential that AI will free a lot of our time and energy that we are wasting on things that could be done by AI.
Yeah.
And thanks to that, we will be able to focus more and more on people, on other human beings. We will start noticing other people because, even like the content that we are consuming, like we will see, okay, it's AI generated. So we'll start looking for content generated by people. We'll start looking for interaction with people, that real people. And that may make us more human, as you said.
Yeah. And I think we are now delighted with what AI produces because it's so quick, so simple, and so effective, right? When it writes our marketing content, it's perfectly written. But when you generate 3, 5, 10, 30 content pieces with AI, you begin to see one thing, that they are generated, but they are also generic. That they are all built in a similar way, and you become bored. And you think, okay, what can I add to it? How can I humanize it? You have music experience, so I think you will know what I'm talking about. But at first there was this big invention, you can produce drums on a computer. And they're perfectly in line, they're perfectly even, each beat is exactly where it should be. After a couple of years, they introduced a function called humanize. So move this beat a little bit forward and that beat a little bit back, because this is what makes it interesting. Perfection is super boring.
Yeah, like for example, try to listen shopping concert. Okay, this is like the same song that is played by multiple artists.
Yes.
And there is like a jury and there is like a crowd that they are, judging which artists perform it better.
Yes.
It's not mechanical. It's just about emotion, about things that people are adding to the notes that are there. So yeah, that's a great example. Okay, you already started talking about music, so let's try to wrap up the things that we talked about before and came back to you and your work, your passion, your music. So if our listeners or watchers, viewers would like to find your music somehow and listen to your music, to your art, or also to your podcast, so please tell us where to find you in the internet.
You can find me on most podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. And my music is also there. So Spotify, Deezer, Tidal, wherever you want to listen to it. And also feel invited to my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, you will not listen to my podcast, but you will see my music videos, which is work in progress, because I'm planning to release 12 of them. The third one will be there in October, and then every month there should be another one if I succeed with the plan. My channels are easy to find when you just type Patrycja Obara into the search field.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to have you here. It was great conversation. It was great communication and knowledge exchange that we made today. I hope that people who are watching it, listening it, also feel it that way. So once again, thank you very much. I wish you luck on your presentation today. I hope I will be there and to see the entire story of the knowledge sharing in a working environment. Thank you very much. Pragmatic Talks is delivered to you by Pragmatic Coders, the first choice software development partners for startup founders. Be sure to catch all new episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast channels. And if you are thinking about building your own startup or struggling with product development, contact us and find out what we can do together.